Hi, Kris. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Uh, I understand we're going to have like a little interview recorded with you, but before we do that, do you think you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, I see people are in the panel that I do know already. Yeah, so my name is Kris Wimberly, and I am currently working at Disney TV Animation. I'm a director on a brand new show that has not been announced yet, so unfortunately, I can't share the title of that. But I've been in the industry now for going on like just a month shy of 13 years. So yeah, definitely been doing this for a little while. Yeah.
Oh, and I understand you're going to be answering a couple of questions from the Q&A today as well.
Yeah. If there are any questions, I'm happy to spend a few minutes to answer anything that comes up after the recorded interview. Yeah.
All right. So you ready for us to play the recorded interview then?
Sure.
All right, let's go to it.
And my name is Kris with a K, Kris Wimberly, and I'm currently directing at Disney TV Animation. I wouldn't label myself a talented person, but a skillful person. I have this conversation a lot with people because I very generously, people always tell, oh, you're so talented. And I thank them, and it's very flattering, but I think I've gotten to where I am based on being skillful, and that comes with a lot of work and a lot of focus and determination. When I was in art school, I kind of got into art school at a pretty big disadvantage because I'm not this like talented person, uh, like I just woke up with this skill set, like jumped out of bed and all of a sudden, I'm working in the industry. Or so I spent a lot of time trying to measure up to peers that I felt were much better than me and all that kind of thing, to the point where I had a lot of failed relationships in art school. By the time I finished school, I got hired at Nickelodeon. So I was at my dream studio on one of the biggest shows ever created. And that's the recipe for, being top to bottom, eternally happy and grateful, until I turned around to celebrate and nobody was there, because I had pushed away so many relationships and so many friends and broken promises of going to hang out and experience life, which on a side note is extremely important. If you want to tell stories and life stories, you need to go experience those. But I was so busy trying to get up my skill set and trying to perfect that stuff that, it was kind of lonely. And so I did learn that lesson where I was like, oh man, maybe well, and then I don't know, like it worked, right? So I don't know for me, like what the answer is. Every show you go to, um, it's weird. They want you because you're good at what you do, but they want you to do it the way that they need it. So there is this weird sort of middle ground you have to find between those two things, where you do what you're good at and you deliver what they need in the way that they need it. So what ends up happening is the fundamentals that you learn, you don't lose those. But I think of it sort of like a toolbox, right? In your toolbox, you have everything you can think of that you will need: hammer, saw, screwdriver, measuring tape, whatever. But you don't need every tool for every project. It's nice to have them, but you don't need them for every project. So your job as a board artist, especially in the way that the industry is built now, which is very different than in the 40s, where you stay at one studio and you write it out till you get your gold watch at the end of 50, 60 years. With this, you have to be kind of this gun for hire, where you need to figure out what it is this show is looking for and what in your toolbox will help you build that thing for them. Whenever I'm like the new person in the room, my thought process is I don't say anything. When I started working on Elena of Avalor, I came onto that show for season 3. and I was on there for the whole season 3. But my position was what we call a storyboard floater, which mirrors a lot of the duties of somebody who would be classified as maybe like an assistant director or something like that. So that means I'm sitting next to the director in many of the meetings. In editorial, we're like hashing out story and character decisions after the boards have been done. So there's a lot of like really deep fixing sometimes that has to happen. But in that, many times when we're sitting in editorial sessions, that comes with sitting in there with some of the higher leadership roles, like the executive producer, showrunner, the supervising director, like people who are normally, extremely busy and are running the show. So when I came in doing that position, I know what I'm worth. I know what my ideas are, that my ideas are valuable, but they've been doing this show for 2 seasons before I got there. So my job is not, even though they hired me to do this job, and they were very flattering when they hired me, they gave me all kinds of really great words of affirmation and a lot of support to come in. But I still took my usual route, which is to just sit and listen and absorb everybody's actions and reactions in the room. And I did that for weeks. I got to hear, how does the showrunner like to hear ideas presented to him? Which one of all these ideas is he picking? And does it match mine? Things like that, right? Like I'm just listening and absorbing who gets their answer taken the least, right? And not because that person isn't valuable, but because that person keeps missing the mark. They're not understanding how the story structure is, or whatever the case is. But I'm listening and absorbing. And then finally, when I felt like, okay, now's the time, I slowly start interjecting. I slowly start trickling in, not in a rude way, but just in a like, well, I hear what that person's saying. I hear what you're two saying over here. What if we put these together? And then I interject what my real idea is. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's it. That's great. Let's do that. So here we are now. And the next show that I'm working on, which was the show creator created this new show, and I'm directing on it because he's like, Kris knows exactly what I need. He always listens to what people are saying. Like, he's the director material, but it's because of that process, right? Where I'm listening first and absorbing other people's personalities and actions, and then applying myself to those. I've spent a lot of time doing the role without it being called the role. Now that I've finally gotten to the place where the duties now match the title, right? Or I guess the other way around, the title now matches the duties. It's a great feeling. It's extremely rewarding, especially with the team that I'm on. You work so hard for something. And I feel like this is, hopefully I'm not interjecting, hopefully I'm not projecting in a weird way, but I feel like most people think, okay, here's the goal, there's the goal. I'm gonna work really hard till I get the goal, and then it's time to celebrate, right? And my thinking is a little different, where it's like, okay, there's the goal. I'm gonna work very, very hard to get to that goal. But then once I'm in that position, once I'm at that goal, now I have to prove that I earned it. Like, now I have to prove to people, even though the proof is the fact that I got it, right? But for some reason, I don't want people to be let down or proven wrong or feel like they made a mistake. So now I have to, like, even though I was already at 100%, now I have to get, like, turn it up to 115% to make sure. I'm like, no, see, this is why you hired me. Like I told you I could do it. And not in a overly boastful way. And I don't even say these things out loud. This is just for my own benefit and my own satisfaction. Another thing too, and I think this is extremely underrated, because I don't see people talk about it very much on social media or wherever. So maybe I should do a class on this. But taking other classes that are not drawing, that are not filmmaking, take other classes. It helps you in so many ways. And it also depends on what your discipline is going to be. Like, if you're going to be a background painter, maybe you don't want to take acting classes, and that's understandable. But if you want to be a board artist, I think you 110% should take acting classes, because it greatly influences what you produce. But anyway, for me, taking other classes and other things, like I do recreational, like gardening. I'm not a full hobbyist, but like I'll do it from time to time, and I'll like study and learn and watch videos and like do other things about gardening, which has nothing to do with animation and filmmaking, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. But it does make me think differently about something different. And maybe there's a nugget or a gem I'll glean from that to take with me moving forward. For example, I guess I just answered my own question. Patience. I can be a very impatient person, which is partly why I went to storyboarding instead of character layout, because I don't have the patience to animate things from beginning to end. And so I would rather plan it out and let that Porschmo animate it. Because first of all, they're probably much better than I'll ever be at animating. But secondly, because I, don't have the patience for it. But with gardening, you can't rush a plant to grow, right? So you have to wait to find out if your results are going to come through. I think it's a combination of those types of things that keeps me like fresher and more current and push past currency, right? To being more creative. I believe there's room for anybody who wants it badly enough. It's not always just about talent. And I'm 100% proof of that. But because I had the patience and I had the perseverance and persistence to keep working at it and just take feedback as it's presented to me and work with the critiques, that's the only reason I got here. Literally, it wasn't because I was so much better of an artist than other people. I promise you that was not it. It was just that I was willing to outwork everybody else.
All right. Wow. So thank you for that interview that you provided with us already.
Sure.
Yeah. Is there anything in there that you kind of wanted to address before we jump into Q&A here?
I mean, it's funny to listen back to that and hear my thoughts like back to me from the outside of my body, and I'm like, wow, I do feel like that. Wow, that's exactly true. So like,
finally someone you can agree with, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody I can agree with. I like that guy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's anything that I would want to reiterate other than, like, I really do believe that if you want something bad enough, like, for example, to be in this industry, it's just a matter of making the decision to go and get it. And that may look different for everybody, that journey, but there's enough room for everybody. And especially now with all of the media, streaming services and all the new stuff that's cropping up, like there's definitely a lot of room for people. So
yeah. Well, if you're all right with it, then I guess we'll just go ahead and jump into the Q&A here. We already got a couple questions popping up.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll just go into this first one because you mentioned you directed at Disney TV.
That's what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Yeah. So this person's wondering what at Disney TVA, what qualities are sought after for directors? Do you find that directors often come from one specialty like story or animation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, typically, and I guess I should speak specifically to Disney because that's where I am now. Typically, the people who earn the director spot are story people, like storyboard people, because, and I guess not always, I'm sure there's been people who've come from other disciplines, but the reason is because as a director, there's so many fine details and elements that are part of the role that if you haven't been trained on those things, they're really hard to get across or articulate. Doesn't mean you have bad ideas. Doesn't mean that you can't grow into the position. It just means that it's going to take a lot more time to get that person there. And so what I have seen is, for example, let's say there's somebody who's, I've seen, this is a true story, true person. I've seen somebody go from a background designer, background supervisor, to then leaping over into storyboards, and then very quickly got promoted into directing because they had the chops for all that stuff, but they had to make the crossover first from design to boards and then going forward, because in the storyboard process, you learn so much about how a show is made that you don't really get to see from other, unless you ask a lot of really good questions. You don't get to see those parts come together. So typically the people who do get hired to be directors are ones who've kind of lived through that story experience. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And does that sort of match your trajectory as well?
I knew from the beginning I was a story person. So I jumped, actually, that's mostly true. When I came out of art school, I wasn't too sure if I wanted to do boards or character design, because when I was coming out of school, like character design was the rock star job, and that kind of changes every like 5 years, like depending upon like who's super talented out there in the industry. But at that time it was character design, but I still had a really big passion, really deep passion for story. So when I came out of art school, I had a portfolio for both character design and storyboarding. And strangely, ironically enough, my character design portfolio, the feedback I got from professionals was, this is great, you could definitely do this job, but your story stuff could use more work. And so in my mind, I thought, okay, great, I'll put the character stuff aside and just focus on story, because that's what I need to get better at. I can always come back to design anytime I want later. And I just never went back. I never went back to do design because I just love story. I love world building and problem solving and like really putting together a story, character relationships, all that stuff. So that really came through for me in my process or my trajectory, and I just kept riding that wave. So it was a little more linear that way for me.
Our next question comes from someone who also sounds like they want to pursue storyboarding, but it seems like in their college curriculum, the storyboard classes are a little bit later on. They're wondering what they can do now to go ahead and get started learning.
Wow, that's a great question. So the first thing is, we have this crazy thing called the internet now, which I wish I had it as developed as it is now. I wish I had back when I was trying to figure this stuff out. And there are forums on places like Twitter where you can talk to so many other people who are either aspiring to be in storyboarding or who are professional storyboard artists who are sharing knowledge all the time, right? This is not a plug to go follow me on Twitter, but I post a lot of content on Twitter, little gems and nuggets about how to become a better board artist. And I will host a lot of workshops and I announce them on Twitter. So, you can take a class with me, like not literally next week, but it could be like next week you could be working with me on learning how to become a better storyboard artist. And, I'll drop little extra things like, here's a free test you can do, right? Like at the beginning when COVID, the pandemic started, I released a test because I was trying to help encourage people to stay home. So I was like, here, while you're sitting at home doing nothing, here's a free storyboard test to work on, and feel free to put it in your portfolio if you finish it, right? So there's little things like that you can find around the internet. You can also sniff out, like, if you're at one school, go to a junior college and see if there's any classes you could pick up there, like a Saturday class or something to take adjacent to the classes you're already taking. And ask professionals, if you do follow them on Twitter or Instagram or wherever, ask them what their favorite tips are, or like what are things you can do to get better at that craft until you're able to take those classes at your own school.
And what was your Twitter so people can follow you and access your wealth of knowledge?
Sure. It's at Swaggletooth, SWAGGLETOOF. I don't know what it means. Yeah.
You just picked it?
Yeah, it just sounded hilarious one day, and I'm like, that's gonna be my new, uh, all my social media. Well, now I'm only down to 2, but my social media handles are at Swaggletooth.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find that and put that in the chat.
Here,
And
I
while I
can
do
type it
that,
in the chat real quick because it'll take me 20 seconds to type it, which is
all right.
faster than you going to hunt for it. At Swaggletooth. There it is.
There it is. Yeah. Oh, someone already linked. Okay.
Thank you, Ian.
I'll move on to the next question then.
Sure.
Where this person says, I really agree with your statement of proving yourself, but how do you deal with burnout while working on projects that are personal or not personal?
Oh, that's a heavy one. So I'll preface this by saying that burnout looks different for everybody and comes faster than it for some people than for other people. So what can excuse me, what can and does work for me may not be a blanket thing for everybody. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there. But to get to the heart of the question, you got to find what's important to you about the thing that you're working on, and keep it in mind and drive home those elements, right? Like, if you're working on a personal project that, okay, so here's the more, let me put it in context. So for the last, I'm going to say at least 3 years, let's just say last 3 years, I've been working on various junior projects, junior meaning preschool aged stuff. So I did worked on a Curious George movie, then Elena of Avalor, and now this new show that I'm working on now. So a lot of really young stuff. And it's very easy to get fatigued with all of the, parameters you have to stay within to create content for preschoolers that's safe for them. In addition to all the stuff that's happening globally, right? Like now we're shifting our messages and we're shifting the way that we present content to people. So that's a lot of noise that I have to keep in my mind. So it's a lot. And the way to avoid burnout from that, and then there's also the element, as the person who asked the question pointed out, being authentic to who you are and proving yourself, right? So all of these layers are happening at one time, and what I have to do is create other projects that are very different from what I'm working on in my day job, so that I feel like I'm switching gears. It's a little different now because now I'm a parent and all this kind of extra stuff that that needs my attention. So I'm able to remind myself of other things that I enjoy and that's important for me. But the big picture, or the most important thing, is not to lose focus of the big picture. What's important to you, and how are you going to be able to get to that thing or achieve that goal or whatever it is that's important to you. So that's the best I can do without knowing this person's specific plight that they may be dealing with. But hopefully that helps kind of answer it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to anybody, really.
Okay, cool.
This next question is really interesting. It's coming from someone who's a writer and director in theater, and they kind of want to make the transition to becoming a director for animation. What is a good avenue? What's maybe like a good job for them to make that transition?
So they're already working in theater. They're a director in theater, you said?
That's what it seems like, yes.
Okay. So well, I guess it doesn't matter if you're in theater or if you're in live action, like television or whatever. The best thing to do is to get in anywhere inside of animation, because you have to know how the machine works to know how to be able to create for it, right? For example, there is a person who really, I don't want to say famous. I don't want to tweak this the wrong way, but somebody of really great notoriety came to me and was like, I had this idea that I really wanted to make. It's a short, it was going to be a live action short, but the more that they thought about it, they felt like, this would be a really great piece of animated content, kind of like Hair Love or like Dear Basketball, something in that vein. And so he shared the script with me. I read it over and I'm like, wow, this is a really powerful story. It's a great idea. I could see it animated, but this script is not animatable yet. And he was gracious enough to take that piece of feedback and understand what I was saying. But this is to the point. Like, if you don't know, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you got to go get in there and find out, like, how do you make a script serviceable to animation? Because it's not exactly a transition, a linear translation, even more so between theater and animation. So there's a young woman, an extremely talented young woman who just transferred over from live action to the show that I'm on now. This is her first proper animation job. And it's not a super glamorous position that she's holding, but boy, is she learning a lot, a lot. And I know this because we've had little extra side meetings and conversations and stuff, which you can do if you're in the animation sphere. You can have these extra coffees and conversations and pick people's brains. And that's exactly what she's doing. And she's learned so much in such a short time that she would have never learned outside of that fortress, right? So that's probably what I would recommend, is find a way to get into animation, to learn what it takes to make animation so that you can be effective at that job, and gain people's trust to give you, $15 million to start a TV show, because that's about what it costs. So that's why it's so impossible to sell a show, because they need to know that you are going to take that thing and that baton and run with it.
And what would you say is a good position to just get that experience? Maybe like even just a production assistant or something, just to see how it's made?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you can nab an internship or a fellowship, go for that. I started out as a production assistant. Actually, I started out as an intern and then got hired on as a production assistant before getting promoted into storyboard revisions. So, but in that 6 months, or however long it was, like 2 months, like, I learned so much about it, because as a PA, you're talking to everybody in the pipeline. You're talking to editors, you're talking to directors, you're talking to board artists, background painters. You're learning one of the most important things about directing, which is not how well you can draw. It's about how well you can manage people, right? Being a director is actually a managerial position. So if you're not able to effectively communicate with somebody and get your ideas across to them and hear what they're saying and drive them to get the best out of them, you're going to fail. Like, people aren't going to see you as a director. So any position you can get into, even if it's a production assistant, you're going to learn how to make those connections and talk with people and learn how people work and how to work with them.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
This next person's wondering that even with like a formal animation art education from a school, were there any aspects of working in the animation field that you felt like school didn't prepare you for?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like, so I teach a lot of workshops and classes and one-on-one mentorships and things like that. And one of the first thing I always try to explain to people is, like, look, don't hate on your school just yet. Like, it's very hard to run a business. This is all businesses, right? Animation, school, whatever, it's all businesses. It's very hard to effectively pump out a certain caliber of student from beginning to end and have everybody be at that same level when you have these classes that are overflowing, bursting, right? Like, you're to these students, you're in those classes, and how many people petition to get in that class at the beginning of every semester or term or quarter. It's very tough. So all they can do is give you the basic fundamentals and the basic building blocks, and then it's up to you from there to go after what's important to you, whatever part of the craft that is, background painting or whatever. So for somebody who's not trying to think of how to put this in a helpful way. Is this helpful so far, though? Like, what I'm saying, like, it's up to you to, like, figure out what's important to you, take the tools from school, and then go find the rest. Podcasts, workshops, like I said, online, wherever you can find it, and more and more are cropping up. So hopefully I'm not dancing around the question. Hopefully I hit what they're asking for.
Yeah, and I think you even answered this other question, which is how do you use your time in school to decide a future career? Which sounds like you also tackled that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would add to that, to answer that specific question, is school is designed to make you try a little bit of everything so that you can find out what that is. And it doesn't matter what discipline you're doing. It doesn't even have to be art. Like you could be, whatever. My wife, who's getting her PhD in astrophysics, she had to do all kinds of other science first before she landed on the thing that they let you get your PhD in. It's a very strange thing. Animation's the same way. That's why they make you do student films, because they want you to see what it feels like to design backgrounds or design props so that you can go, oh, I hate this, right? Like, I wish somebody else would do this part. Now you know that's not for you. You want to focus on, whatever it is, like modeling, right? In CG, like that's your thing. You found out by doing all those extra assignments and taking those extra classes. And that's how you hone in on what it is. And look, at the end of the day, you're not stuck with whatever job you choose. It's not like if you chose, like I said earlier, just because I chose to go into boarding, excuse me, doesn't mean that I can't go back to designing. And I have done that. I've jumped into doing like freelance design for shows and whatever, because I have that background. So you're not stuck. Just choose something that you feel like you could do for a long time and do that to the best of your ability. And then you can move around from there if you need to. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really good. It's really good advice.
Cool.
This next question is really interesting. It's coming from someone who's asking, if you're already working the job you want, but at a small studio, and you see a job opening at a studio that you want to work at in the future, a larger studio, but the job opening isn't necessarily the same career path, like say something like a PA, is it worth applying to that to get experience at that studio?
Man, these are such good questions. Yeah, I mean, typically, okay, so here's the general outlook within the industry. You have to take care of you. That's the bottom line. So whatever is important to you, go after that thing. Having said that, here's the caveat. If you have just started a job, you have given them a commitment for a chunk of time to do that job before leaping to something else, even if it's in the same studio, right? Like some people are like, I just want to get my foot in, so I'll start as a PA, and as soon as there's a character design job opening, or as soon as there's like a texture artist opening, I'm jumping on that. But what you have to realize is, you make a commitment once you start working on a show to either basically to write out the season. Okay, so that might be, if you're in the very beginning of the season, it might be a year. If you came on halfway through, it might only be 4 or 6 months. It could be shorter. So keeping that in mind, you don't want to burn any bridges by coming in and then splitting right as soon as you get in the door. That looks really bad. But if it's a step up, so here's a caveat to the caveat. If it's a step up, what we would consider to be a promotion, not a lateral move. If you're not sure what that means, a lateral move is doing the same thing or taking a step down at another, place, another show, another studio. That's not cool. But if it's a step up or a step closer toward what you want, then it's understandable. And most people are supportive of that, right? In animation, people love fostering growth, and they support people going after what's important to them, because you have to like doing it, right? And you don't want to be stuck doing something that's very tedious to you or that you hate. So all that's to say, if you're at a small studio and you're doing something that's what you want to do, but or it's not exactly what you want to do, but you see that opening at another studio, go for that job. Hopefully you've at least given some chunk of time to that smaller studio, and they know they can't compete with the legacy of a bigger studio. They can't compete with the pay of a bigger studio. They can't compete with the longevity of a job. Like there's a lot of things that they know, they understand, and so they're not going to get in your way, and they shouldn't give you a hard time about it. So I know that that's a lot of nuance and a lot of weeds right there, but that's the general way of how to look at a situation like that.
Yeah, I like that. You got to take care of yourself first.
Yeah, always. Because you know what? And this is just an extra tidbit. Nobody asked this opinion, but I'm going to give it anyway. Here's the thing. This is how I live my career. I am willing to walk away from something if it's not working, or to go get the thing that's important to me, because a studio would 100% do that to me, right? Like there's no reason that they owe me anything unless it's a contractual agreement, and that's different, but I'm just saying on a regular basis, like if I wasn't working out, they wouldn't hesitate to let me go, right? That's the nicer way of saying it. So why shouldn't I have the same thing for something like my career that's so important to me? And that's why my career, if you look at my track record, it kicks ass. Like I have a lot of amazing stuff on my resume because I go for what's important, right? And to me, the way that they would to take care of their show or their employees or whatever. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah, that's so true. I think I read a tweet like that just today that was like, big studios don't necessarily care about you, but people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
This next question is pretty good. They're asking, what ability do you see in storyboard portfolios? Like in 90% of storyboard portfolios that they fail to demonstrate to get them the job.
I can hit that with one bullet point that just knocks out all of them, which is you have no idea about what that job looks like. Like it's so clear when you look at somebody, and it's not to say that they draw poorly. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if I look at a portfolio, and I look at millions of portfolios because of my past podcast and because of like the business that spawned off of that. I do portfolio reviews for CTN on behalf of Disney. I've seen a million portfolios. And the ones that I can always tell that are not ready yet, it's like, you have no idea what this job is. Like, you don't know about the pace. You don't know about how to whatever it is, stay on model. You don't understand perspective. You don't know how to understand how to nurture a scene for a moment that's really important between characters versus whether it's just like gratuitous, like lengthiness that doesn't need to be there. Like, do you understand about being economical with your storytelling? All of these things is what equals the job, which, by the way, going back to the previous question about schools not preparing you for, they can't teach you that stuff. They give you 16 weeks to work on the pre-production of a student film, for example, let's say with one semester, whereas I get 6 weeks to knock out a storyboard for an 11-minute episode. You get 16 weeks, you get 4 months to work on a 90-second film, right? Like, how's that for an eye-opener? And so when I look at a portfolio, I can tell when somebody has like spent 6 months just making this board amazing. And it is amazing, but it's also like a 9-minute epic film that we don't need to see. Like, I need to see 60 seconds worth of animation to know if you know how to storyboard or not. So people who don't spend enough time looking at professional portfolios for whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be storyboarding, whatever the discipline is, if they're not looking at the portfolios of the job that they want to get, theirs isn't going to look like that. And so you need to spend the time to do that research so that you're hitting the same mark to get those same jobs. That's probably the biggest thing that I see, is just not understanding what the job actually looks like.
And what would you say is the best way to find out what the job looks like?
Again, just go start asking people. I mean, LinkedIn, Twitter, I guess even Instagram too, but especially those places. If you go and, for example, I'll just use myself. If you want to be a board artist, and you come across me on Twitter and you see I'm on there, oh, look, he's a director. It says right in my bio, director at Disney, whatever, or whatever. Ask me the question that you need to know, which is like, hey, this question you just asked, how do I make my portfolio stand out? I will tell you, here's 3 things you should do. Not everybody's going to have ample amounts of time to do that, but we would like to try to give that to you. And there's a lot of professionals who do like to do that. There's YouTube videos and tutorials, people like myself or Steve On or Peter Paul. We all, I think there's a couple other I'm forgetting, but we all do storyboard classes where we like to teach people this stuff because we need more and more better artists out there. So it's out there. You just got to like put in the legwork and ask other people, hey, where are you getting your information from? Oh, let me go follow that person too, and ask them those questions. You can't be shy,
This might lead into the next question, which is, it literally says, how do you retrieve friendships? But I think they mean like, how do you make connections? How do you network in the industry?
So I made a podcast that is 100 episodes long about how to do this. So if you want over 100 hours of how to network in the industry, I recommend I didn't intend to plug my podcast, but it is 5 seasons worth of material that you may want to check out. So there's that. It's called The Animation Network. You can find it on Gumroad. But the important thing is to understand that we've all, and I say we as in all the professionals that you hope to have the same job as them, we've all started where you are. So we understand the struggles you're going through. Your situation is not unique. You may think it is, and it might be compared to some of your peers and friends, right? But it's not new. And if we haven't lived it, we know somebody who has. So we can give you a great sense of direction, by you just talking with us and letting us know what's on your mind or what's important to you. And that's the source of networking. It's about building a relationship, right? There's a word called rapport, RAPPORT. Rapport means to build a relationship. It's not you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Like that's not what this is about. What it's about is sharing with people what's important to you so that they can help you with that. People like to help other people that they like and that they feel that they know, right? That's why there's all this, and I don't want to go down this road, so let's not do that. But that's why all the nepotism that has been existing for years between genders and races and all that stuff is because they're just helping people that they can talk to easily. And that's been my secret to my success. If I just make myself easy to talk to with anybody, then I'm going to have an easier time. And that's exactly how it worked out for me. So if you learn how to just have a conversation with people, they will warm up to you and they'll be able to help you with those kinds of things that are important to you.
We just got a couple of similar questions. I think I'm going to try to wrap them up into one. The first one being, how many panels do storyboard artists draw a day? And the second one is, what do you think is a good pace for doing drawings or revisions?
So I'm going to answer this, and I hope it doesn't come off sounding like rude or insensitive to the person who asked that question. But that's a great tip off that the person who asked about the panel count doesn't quite know like what the job looks like yet, because it's not like comics, like comic books or comic, web comics or anything like that, where we're counting by panels. It's about page length of script, right? And so typically the general rule of film is there's 1 page of script equals 1 minute of runtime on the screen. That's typical. It depends on how much action is on the page or how much dialogue is on the page. It varies a little bit, right? But we don't go by panel count. We go by how many pages over how much time. The standard for TV animation, right? Standard meaning this is what all the big studios are doing. Disney, Netflix, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, whoever, it doesn't matter, whoever you can think of. We're going by about roughly 16 pages of script over 6 weeks, okay? Which is blindingly fast. And that includes having read the script, banging out your thumbnails, fleshing out your roughs, retrieving notes from directors and showrunners and whoever, applying those notes and cleaning it up, and then turning in the board at the end of 6 weeks. Some studios are 5 weeks, but they have maybe less pages. Some studios might give you longer, like 7 or 8 weeks, like primetime shows, because the script is a little more fluid and it changes a lot. So there's a lot of revisions to do. It's just, it's a different animal. So it varies, but if you can try to find a pace that is about 16 pages of script over 6 weeks, that's what we're doing every day. That may sound very daunting. So I'll just give you this last piece of measure, which is to say, if you were to get a test for storyboards, they give you about 1 page of script and they say, turn it in 1 week. So if you can do that, you're good, right? Because 1 page is about 1 minute of animation and they give you a week to do that. That means learning the models close enough, thumbnails, roughs, if you need to do that. Some people skip thumbnails, whatever your process is, but learn the models, roughs, and clean it up, and it should be done in a week. So when people are like, I'm trying to work on my portfolio, you know, and I've been doing it over the summer. I'm like, over the summer, how many pieces do you have? And they're like, well, I have an idea for one, and I'm like halfway through another one. I'm like, are you kidding? And over the summer, I could have had like 7, I could have a brand new entire portfolio, 7 to 8 boards, you know, brand new. So that's not to make you feel bad or intimidate you or whatever. It's just to say that, like, that's the kind of pace that we're moving at. Granted, I've been doing this for over a decade, so, you know, but if you were hired on your first show, that's what we would expect from you as well.
Very cool, very useful, and very needed advice, I think.
I get that question a lot, a lot.
You had like a prepared answer for that?
Almost. I mean, I've lived this stuff so much that, yeah, it's my whole life is a prepared answer, I think.
This next person is wondering if you ever have any days where you just feel uninspired or you don't want to work on anything. Is there anything you do to make yourself feel better so that you're motivated to jump right back into your projects?
Yeah, you know, again, like I said earlier, my process is my own, so I don't expect people to take my advice and apply it to their own life if it doesn't fit. But for me specifically, I take a break. You know, life is about taking breaks. And most people, you know, it's funny, like when I talk about story and I'm guiding a board artist or whatever, I always tell them, like, play up the pauses, right? In a storyboard, that means, like, if this is an important moment, milk it, let it breathe. Don't like cram it with jokes and move really fast. Like, let it breathe, open it up. I live my life the same way. Like, if I'm feeling like, holy shit, there's a lot. Sorry, hopefully everybody here is old enough to hear vivid language. But if everything is like really just weighing on me, I'm stressed out, like literally peek behind the curtain. I almost missed this call because I was working. Like, I literally finished a storyboard check-in with my board artists minutes before I got the call of like, hey, you're supposed to be on this CTN call right now. But this stuff just layers on really, really fast. And sometimes I got to just be like, okay, everybody wait. I just need to watch Netflix all night tonight. I'll wake up early tomorrow and deal with it tomorrow. And here's the logic to it is this. I know that the longer and the harder I push myself or force a square peg into a round hole, the more fatigued I'm going to get, which means the more mistakes I'm going to make, the more frustrated I'm going to be, and the more that everybody's going to look at me like, dude, what is this? Like, this isn't your normal caliber of stuff. I don't want that. So I would rather stop, go outside. I take a lot of walks, go on hikes, go on runs. Like, I'm an outside person. So I do a lot of that. When I'm in the office at work, like, you have to text me to find me because I'm never at my desk, right? Like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm talking to people, I'm everywhere. And the reason is because that gives me time to like remove myself, collect my thoughts, let my brain take a break from whatever's holding me down or holding me back, and then start over. And then I find that I can sprint after that. And everything just comes out. Like there's this thing called the flow state where you're just like, you're in tunnel vision. Everything you draw is perfect. You're like, whoa, how did I do that? That came out of my hand. Like some of you probably know what that feeling feels like. And that's because you've given yourself time to rest up before having that breakthrough. So that's my process.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And I feel like I just watched a video of a really smart guy talking about how you should have hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's true. And I did find, I mean, you know, like I said, I have a newer daughter who's eats up a lot of time, and that's a hobby in its own. But aside from that, yeah, like I do a lot of stuff, outdoor stuff, like weird stuff, not weird as in strange, but things that I wouldn't have thought I would get into, like gardening, stuff like that. I'm a grill master. Like people are always so surprised by like my stuff is like on point. And that's a craft, right? It's just a different craft that I love to explore and learn and stuff like that. So
Well, we're getting really close to the end of our time here, so I just want to ask you
sure.
one last question, which I think is a little bit of a recurring question. Uh, what sort of exercises do you recommend for building up your endurance to be able to storyboard at a rate that the industry demands?
Man, that's another really good question. One thing I would say is, you know, I had to drill this into my own head, and then I find that I give this advice to a lot of either mentees or actual people who work under me, you know, on different projects. But like, what I end up saying to people is, just draw the damn thing. Um, which is to say, a lot of people spend time noodling and try the shot from this angle, try the shot from that angle, try it with this many characters in there, and try it with this fewer characters. And what if I cut here and put a truck in there? And it's like, just draw it, and then we'll figure it out after. Because if you keep getting hung up on those nuances, you're never going to get done. And that's what really kills people in the beginning with their with their greenness, right? Like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not aware of the pace, you spend all this time like noodling and finessing, and like your roughs look like cleans because you saw that person, how good their boards are. And you're like, oh my God, I better, you know, really make this thing shine. But, you know, a lot of times people aren't cutting themselves enough slack. And it's like, just draw. And the other thing I say too is just draw what you mean. Just draw what you mean. Like, don't search for it. Don't think so long about like how calculated this needs to be, because at the end of the day, art as a whole, and then trickling down to animation specifically, it's an emotional avenue to share ideas, right? So just draw what you mean and just get it down, and that always speeds people up. Like it gives them permission to just like let go and and get done, just go forward. um and that ended up working for me to be able to draw a lot faster, to the point where my roughs are basically my cleans. Like every show I've worked on, or at least the last several shows I've worked on, like I only have to draw the thing one time, and I go back and make notes. There's always notes. It doesn't matter how amazing and good and prolific you are, there's always going to be notes. And so I'll go back and do the notes, but I have all the time in the world to do the notes because I only had to do one pass of the board. And that's because I just went with my gut, my instinct, and I just drew it. Just put it down on the page or the screen or whatever. And then when I get to the end, go back and tweak and fiddle and all that stuff with it. So that's what I would say. And there's other like exercises you could do, like you know, this goes back to a question that somebody was asking earlier. And since we're like right at the end of time, I'll just wrap it up by giving you a couple of free exercises. One thing is just go get a clip from YouTube or whatever of one of your favorite movies, or maybe a movie you've never seen. Audio grab the audio. Just, you don't even need the video. Just grab the audio, and there's your script. Go start boarding how you would envision that scene. If you're a reader, flip to a favorite chapter and flip to a chapter in your favorite book. You already have the characters, you already know how they should be because you've read that book so many times, or whatever the case is. And now you have a prompt for a storyboard. You don't have to have written every single exercise. That's not your job as a board artist. Your job as a board artist is to board the material that's been given to you, right? And this could be the same thing. Work with a friend who is a writer. Just be like, I'll tell you what, you write this thing, keep it short, right? Like a page, I'll board it, whatever. Or, hey, buddy, you do great designs. Can I use your character designs to make this storyboard? And now you both have portfolio pieces. I mean, there's all these great exercises you can do that I think are really great ways to achieve that.
Love that. I hope everyone took notes on that. That was some really great advice. And also, just draw the dang thing. Love that.
Just draw it, man. Just draw it. Yeah. Like, I've said that to so many people so many times, because you can see they're searching through their drawings, right? It's like, just draw it. Just draw it. Wow, you guys are very generous with your comments. Thank you. Venetia knows. She's taken my classes. She can tell you, like, this is how my classes go all the time. Like, I just tell you stuff because I want you to succeed, and my podcast is the same way. So if you're interested in that, it's around. So yeah.
It's funny that you point out Venetia, because I see them all the time in our stuff too. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Great job on like showing up.
Yeah, it's consistent. Yeah, Venetia is consistent for sure.
So yeah, we're a little bit at the end of the time. I know you mentioned you just got off the phone at work and then you came straight to here. So I'm gonna let you get back to your second job, your daughter, and maybe spend some time on Netflix. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for such amazing advice.
No problem. It's my pleasure. Truly, it's my pleasure. And it's an open invitation. If you are on those social medias that we talked about, please pester me all you want. I love helping people get further in their careers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And everyone in the chat, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.